And we're back with Rosemary Doyle from Theatre Kingston, Part 2. So, I love theater. I take in as much live theater as I can, but I've never wanted to get involved in it because I don't want the magic to end for me. I don't want to know how they make a phone ring on stage.
Right.
I don't want to be aware of the lighting and all that. I just want to enjoy it. So for very selfish reasons, I have never actually got involved, but I go to everything I possibly can. But you have done everything.
Yes, but we need more people like you.
Who are totally non-critical because I don't want to know how you're doing things.
Yeah, I have worn all the hats, that's for sure. Yeah.
You're an artistic director.
I am.
And that means that you plan the season. You're like the general manager of a business in a sense.
I call myself the artistic director because I personally like it better, that term. Technically for Theatre Kingston, I am the artistic producer because they've combined the general manager and the artistic director together.
Okay.
So for that, I'm also the production manager for Theatre Kingston. Theatre Kingston is a very small company until we do a show. And then we have all the people on board to do the different jobs. But I like to, because of my experience, doing it kind of everything at one point or the other, I always kind of slot myself into whatever part of the department I'm most needed in.
Okay,
So.
and because you're multi-talented, you can slot yourself in just about anything.
It's lots of fun, and also as an artistic director, it works well because when I'm working with a lighting designer, I know enough about lighting design to be able to talk to them and get what we want out of them. Same with sound design, same with set building. I know enough carpentry that I can talk to the designer and say, can we do this or this?
Right, you know what's possible and what's not.
Exactly, and what's practical.
Well,
like,
that's the other, because it's expensive, right?
Yes, like for example, a number of years ago, one of my set designers wanted a box built and she wanted it 8'3", and I explained to her, because I do carpentry, that the plywood comes in 8 feet sheets,
lengths.
so making it that +3 means I have to buy an entire other piece of plywood for no reason.
Yeah.
So she agreed to make it 8 feet instead.
And it worked out just fine.
Nobody noticed the 3 inches.
Yeah, really. So you're putting production together. You've got a budget to work with.
Yes.
What is the highest line item?
In actually doing the shows or in the reality of Theatre Kingston?
If you're putting a show together, so I go to see a show, where did the most of the money get spent?
The artistic staff.
Okay, and that consists of?
The directors, the actors, the designers, and like the people. The people cost the most money.
Okay, salaries, people.
Salaries, the people.
Right, okay. And then set, you would have a budget
Set, you have kind of a budget. You have a budget for how much you're willing to spend on the set.
And then costuming?
And then costuming is usually a little less, depending on the size of the set. Sometimes it depends on the show, right? Like, for example, I have a show coming up next year where the set is kind of a blank stage, so the set will be very small. So I'm going to spend more money on the actual costuming.
Okay.
Right.
Right. So the visual appeal will come in
the
the
visual
costuming
appeal.
instead of
So you get to have more fun that way.
And then there's the administration costs,
Yes.
the price of even selling tickets.
Yes, the price of selling tickets.
There's a fee involved every time we buy a ticket. You have to pay something to the people who are selling the ticket for you.
Yes,
so
exactly.
that all comes into it.
Yeah.
That's it's a lot to balance, and you have to keep your eye on the bottom line as well.
Like for example, with a ticket to let's say the Fringe that we were talking about earlier, $15 goes to the artist, or in the case it would go to like Theatre Kingston if Theatre Kingston was the artist. In the Fringe, the actual production companies gets all the money, so $15 goes to the artist, and then the reason the tickets are more than that is because there are the taxes, the box office fees, the administration fees of that, not from Theatre Kingston, but from the box office. So that goes on top. So your ticket price includes all of that. So it's not just going to the artist.
Got it. And I'm just thinking, you'd also have to pay the rights to put on a play.
Yes.
That's
usually it's about $2,000 or so. I budget $2,000 to $3,000 per show.
So that's the person who writes the play.
Yes.
Gets that.
Yes.
Okay. Is there a difference between a Canadian artist, playwright?
There's kind of a difference between if the playwright is famous or not. If it's like a Broadway show, it's usually a bit more expensive. If you know the playwright, you can negotiate something a little more reasonable. For example, George F. Walker was fairly reasonable. He wanted something a little less than what's usually made. When I did the show called The Meeting, that cost me a little bit more because of the exchange rate, because it was a show from the United States.
Of course.
So things like that.
Right. Do you ever take a chance on one that's never been produced before?
I like to do that a lot.
Yeah?
Yeah. I always like to do new Canadian plays because I think that's part of the reason that we make culture, is to create the culture that we're in.
And we're more
So.
aware of it now.
Yeah.
Yes, I used to, I still do. I go to a one-act festival every fall. And when I
Nice.
first started going, about 30 years ago, there might be one Canadian play, and they'd make a big deal over the fact it was a
Right.
Canadian play. Now almost all of them are Canadian plays. It's like we
Exactly.
have finally found ourselves.
Well, in a way, like if we think about the history of Canadian theatre, my opinion, this is solely just what I think about it, is that in the 60s we had a lot of immigration from the British Isles, and the theatre is part of that tradition. Like people do it that there. And so we had all these like actors and producers and writers that moved to the new land of Canada and brought with them the tradition of making theatre. And that's like the Domino Theatre started with a lot of those people here in Kingston, and like a lot of these, and that kind of started. And then, so it wasn't until the 50s, 60s that really making theatre in Canada was a thing. Before that, we were kind of just surviving, and theatre is kind of a upper echelon of, after you've got a roof over your head and you've got food in your belly and you've got this going on, then you make some theatre. You know, like
Maslow's hierarchy of need.
Exactly.
Right,
We're a little higher up the chain.
Right,
so as a young
right.
company, like a country, I mean, as a young country, theatre came along a little later in Canada than it was already established since Shakespeare's time in England, right? So it comes here. And then you have to remember the United States is a little older than Canada, so its theatre community started a little bit earlier. So we first started doing kind of British plays and American plays, and that's what we were doing. But then we came to our own, and now we've had enough time to actually give birth to people who have the talent to be great playwrights. And we've allowed them, like we've allowed the Judith Thompsons of the world, we've allowed all these people to actually be born, discover that they're amazing playwrights, and to make theatre.
And to actually make some money at it.
Exactly, and make some money
Right,
at it.
yeah.
So now we have this canon of playwrights in Canada who can make plays and make some money out of it. And we've also got TV and film, which subsidizes them. Like a lot of the really great Netflix shows that you're seeing are actually written by Canadian playwrights.
Right, or they were plays, now they've made them into
Exactly.
movies and television
They
series.
do both, you know, because it's very similar way of storytelling.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've done just about everything there is to do in theater.
Yes.
If they said to you, Rosemary, you've got to pick one, and that's all you're going to get to do from now on, what
Ooh.
would you choose?
Oh, I don't know if I could do that. I think I might open a restaurant because I'd be too sad. I did discover last year, though, the one thing I'm not good at, can I answer that question?
All right.
Stage management. Not my jam.
Not your thing.
I'm not good at it. Because it really requires a person to be able to keep everything moving on time, on a set schedule, at a steady pace, and also it requires people to like not voice their opinion unless it's appropriate. That's where I fall down. And
Right.
it's like,
know the feeling.
yeah. So it's like, I'm like, hey, what about, you know?
Right,
So it's,
right.
yeah, I've discovered that that's a real skill set. And when you get a great stage manager, they are worth their weight in gold. Really, they earn every penny that they make, and they really do make the production move so smoothly.
So the stage manager is the one that takes over when the director, on opening night, when
Yeah.
the director says, okay, I've done everything I can do.
Yes.
Now it's over to the stage manager to make sure that it runs smoothly.
Yeah, and I could probably
Okay.
do that part of the stage managing. It's the keeping quiet and letting the director do their thing during the rehearsals.
Right.
That's not, I'm not so good at that. But I'm good at the stage management for the Fringe because I start every show on time, and I'm good at that part.
Right, and that's important.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it used to be you kind of expect things to start late, but not anymore.
No,
We become
the
a little
Fringe-
more.
The Fringe really has to start on time because there's so many shows. So if you're late by 5 minutes, then you're late by another 7 minutes, then like it becomes this railroad.
Domino effect,
so you can't do that because
Yeah.
the shows have to come in and get out at the same
Right,
time. Like during
right.
that half hour between 40 minutes between shows, there's actually an entire set coming down and an entire set going up.
Oh, boy.
So
Wow, that is a lot of balancing.
yeah, so
Wow,
there's
wow.
it's the Fringe is constantly in motion.
So in the minute we've got left, just to
Sure.
recap, we've got your fundraiser coming up.
Yes, please come to see that because money
Yes.
makes everything easier.
And that's right, yes.
And we make better stuff.
Right, when you got a little bit
When
more
we've got a
money,
little cushion, we can
money.
do that little extra.
And then in the month of August, look up the Fringe.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And actually, the tickets are going on sale at the end of June, so you can start browsing the page and seeing what you want to do.
Terrific.
Or you can not decide at all and just get the big pass.
That's right, then you can just, walk anywhere.
Walk anywhere.
This is super. Thank you so much for
You're
sticking
welcome.
around. This has been fun.
My pleasure.
Thanks.